Hey everybody, welcome back to the Quest for the Bestest. It's the podcast from Backlot Banter, where we review and review every single Best Picture winner, including the really old ones, like today with 1933's Cavalcade. My name is Timo. I'm joined, as I am every week, by Abram, Tanner, and Tucker. And, well, this film, we are going to dissect it, directed by Frank Lloyd, a Fox release coming from the United Kingdom, which plays a pretty large role in the film. I'm excited to hear what you guys think about this movie, because I don't have a whole lot to think about this movie. I'll just say it right here. But I'll stop spoiling. I think we should visit what we talked about last time on the show, because, oh boy, we did have a very good episode for Forrest Gump last week. And well, we thought the film, let's see, I got to find it on our list here. Oh boy, where did it go? I can't remember.
It was around like 50 something, 40, low 40s, high 50s, something like that. Am I right?
No, you're not right. After a quick little search with the Command F tool on our giant spreadsheet, the list, in fact, is so long at this point that it's nigh unmanageable. Forrest Gump, I'll stop beating around the bush, got a 7.3 and is at the 59th spot on our list.
Oh, I was being hopeful. It's a better movie and deserves a higher place than that. Go listen to our podcast episode if you want to know why everyone else disagrees with me.
You'll see how Tucker ends up being the odd one out of that whole chat. But Abram, I believe you have the last little bit of housekeeping with our featured comment, and then we can join the procession of Cavalcade.
Oh, very nice, Timo.
Let's be clear, Timo. I don't have a little bit of housekeeping. What I have are two extremely long comments that I'm going to read out to you that both serve different functions. The first comes from our review of Rebecca.
This topical for this film, I believe.
Yeah, we're going way back. We're going back to Alfred Hitchcock's Rebecca, mostly because I have the 39 Steps on my mind, which is queued up for me to watch soon. But the reason we're here is I told a lie. It's not that I'm reading two long comments, that I'm reading two contributions from two different individuals, but one of these individuals' contributions is broken up across many comments. And it's from our new son, Raymi DC, who has commented on a significant number of Quest videos, but what makes this person's contribution so special is it's not one comment per video. It's almost a sort of viewer's commentary of our reviews that unfold.
Live tweeting.
Right. Because Ray says the following three things. Now, I'm hoping that these are in order. I'm trying to read them in order, but you'll become clear what this gentleman is doing as we go along. So Ray first says, this was Hitchcock's first American picture and consequently didn't yet have the power and control over his films he was very soon to realize. Comment 1. Then returns to say, yes, Tanner, the first part rightly sets a tone of Fontaine's character in particular well placed. Then returns again a third time on Rebecca to say, one of those subtlety-ridden films that reveals itself more clearly with additional viewing. So what I like about this is it sort of introduces a new meta to Quest for the Bestest. Mm-hmm. The comment as you go meta. And what's great about this is it really boosts our engagement. What would actually be best in the future, Ray, is if you could do this, but leave every comment from a different account. I'm sure you have multiple Google accounts. That'd be really beneficial to us if you could do that.
And or alternatively, everyone watching this video, leave a comment. That will boost our engagement.
Also true.
Okay.
Don't put the onus on one person. I do want to say, you read 3 comments from one video, which is great. Yeah. But Ray also, on the first comment that first video they commented on, commented 6 times on one video, which is our review of The Apartment. And have since commented audio listeners not going to be able to see, but have commented on oh god, I mean,
he's been
it's
scrolling.
All this one guy.
At least a dozen separate Quest videos,
if not more. And they listened to the entire episode. Like it's apparent from some of the comments. So I'm sorry to some of our longtime Quest viewers, but we have now discovered the most hardcore Quest viewer.
Yeah.
At least on a time scale basis.
The bar has been raised. The bar has been raised.
And I want to raise the bar just a little bit more because I must remind you that 85% of our viewers are not subscribed to Backlot Banter. So you should hit that button if you...
You want to make me sad? Stop saying that.
If you love what we do, but find yourself a little motivationally disinclined to write a comment. You can't be bothered to type out all those letters. Just hit the button that says subscribe, and we'll say that's good enough for now, and then we'll work on it in a future session. You being able to write it.
Quest is really therapy. We're working past people's fears, their fears of commenting on Quest videos.
Now, I do have one other comment, and this is a comment from, we call a lot of our viewers our treasured sons, but I would say Al Naz is more like our reverend father.
Yeah,
absolutely.
The Quest community and his experience in Hollywood and various things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Al writes in our Discord, and this connects to a larger point that I want to raise. He writes his thoughts on what should happen to Quest for the Bestest when we finish. Now, at the end...
Yes, I was just going to bring this up, Abram. Thank you, because if you did not listen to the end of the Forrest Gump episode, we raised the upcoming deadline that Quest for the Bestest has, and we threw it to you, the audience, to tell us, weigh in with your thoughts on what should follow the Quest for the Bestest. And Al Naz did weigh in. Continue, Abram.
And Al Naz says the following: "Hey guys, sorry to write
whole thing. So long.
I'm gonna read what he deserves. It's not gonna take me very long. Hey guys, sorry to write so much, but I'm responding to your question about the future of Quest at the end of your video, Reforest Gump. I'd be happy to see any of the four of you talk about any film, but I think the more audacious project of discussing every Best Picture nominee would be very exciting for me. Here's why. Tucker asked me once if I had a personal BP list on Letterboxd, and I don't, particularly because I don't love a lot of the BP winners, but do love a lot of the nominees. Actually, Tucker, I agree with you. I'm not reading the whole thing. Al, it's too long.
It's too long.
It makes a bit more sense in the Discord
It's too long to read out here. It's not too long in general.
Yes.
It's too long for the airwaves. It's not too long for our Discord. Join our Discord and leave our iWaves. Join the Discord. Leave your robust feedback for all of us there. We'll continue the conversation. Mm-hmm. But basically what Al does is he proceeds to go on and sort of pontificate about why our idea to rank every Best Picture nominee and including to the winners is good. I'm advocating for doing a whole nother awards body, be it Cannes, be it Palme d'Or or whatever. But Al is selling me, and if you want to know why Al sold me, join the Discord.
Yes.
And take out your readers, put them on and check out. And
continue
Al's
to weigh in. Our minds are not made up yet. Continue to weigh in.
Mm-hmm.
Clock is ticking, though.
Yes.
Yeah. We have very few episodes left.
Very
you
few.
only have like a month and a half.
Yeah, something like that.
It'll be fine.
Yeah. The clock is ticking for us to start talking about Cavalcade as well.
Yeah, we have padded this episode enough. Who wants to give a plot synopsis of this film or try to weave in a definition of that word? Because I had to look up what Cavalcade meant after I had seen the movie.
Yeah.
Anyone feeling very...
Okay, well, I'll handle the plot synopsis again. This is my third week in a row, third episode in a row doing the plot synopsis, and I think I'm pretty good at it. And funny enough, it's the third film in a row that has a sort of similar structure.
Yeah.
Because, like Forrest Gump and like Cimarron before that, we're sort of in a film that spans a number of decades as we are taken through the events of the early 20th century as it revolves around two families in England who live in London. Jane and Robert, who are sort of this well-to-do family, and Ellen and Alfred. Thank you.
Alf.
Alf. Yeah, that's a good point. Who are sort of more of a working class sort of family. And we start out in 1899, and the patriarchs of both of these families go to the South African Anglo-Boer War in 1900. That is then followed by the death of Queen Victoria.
Yeah,
one of the queens.
Yeah.
And
are you noticing a pattern here? It's history again.
Yes, it's just history again. The Titanic sinks. World War I breaks out. All things of this nature happen.
Guy flies the English Channel in one shot.
That's true. And we sort of, characters enter and leave due to travels or deaths and things of that nature, and. We come out on the other side in 1933, the year the film released. And I'm not going to start with my thoughts. I want to hear from somebody else.
I can go.
Okay, Timo will go.
Chomping at the bit.
I'm chomping at the bit because this movie did not chomp my bit one single bit. This was a snooze fest of a film for me. I did not enjoy it very much. I found myself very unenthused. It did not grab me. I did not care about the characters. The plot did not present to me interesting things to think about. and I actually fell asleep while watching it, which is a very rare thing for me while watching films. So I like woke up and the film had moved on, and I looked outside my window and it was shining midday bright, and I was like, oh, that's a weird feeling. So, but I forced myself like Clockwork Orange to keep my eyes open for the rest of the movie. So I didn't really like it that much, and I'm gonna try to piece together why they picked it, but I don't even think I could piece together much more meaning-wise about this movie.
Yeah.
I am gonna be honest with you. I paid so little attention to Cavalcade that I'm like,
I was trying my so hardest to pay attention, but man, literally most everything else was more interesting.
Yeah, so there's a couple issues. First of all, in the last week, I've watched a Super Mario Brothers movie 2 times, so I went from a film about literally everything and hyperstimulation to Cavalcade, which is about basically nothing. And so I wasn't in the mindset for this film to begin with. But in all seriousness, I felt comfortable padding out the housekeeping section because what is there to even talk about in Cavalcade?
Yeah.
What's interesting to me about this film is that it really wants to have huge dramatic stakes. And it really wants to be this sort of sweeping, intercontinental, global affair. And it is, but it also has no heart to it. There's no core. We don't care about any of the characters. Everybody dies off screen. Plot unfolds to only service plot. There's very little character development, even though the characters do many things. We're just going from war to musical number to like cutaway of the Titanic to war to like weird layered montage over repeated footage. And I just think that this film is all about the idea that in 1933, boy howdy, to borrow Tanner Dykstra's phrase, it's cool that we could capture all of this spectacle, but there's nothing tying me to it. And so ultimately, I just could not bring myself to keep my eyes on the TV for more than 5 minutes before I was literally looking at anything else in the room.
Yeah.
Tucker Hazel?
I made a bold claim when we finish this film, and it's a claim that I will stand by and I'd like to unpack as we go through our review here, that this is the worst Best Picture winner. I think that it is by far the least interesting I've ever been watching these films, and even though I might say something like, I dislike Hamlet more, I recognize that is a stronger quality film. Crash might be a bigger mess than this film is, but at least it's significantly more interesting to talk about. So Cavalcade, I'm going to say pretty much flat out, is the worst of the Best Picture winners. And I do think there is stuff to talk about, mostly in dissecting what it lacks, because it has the bones to be interesting, and you can see that there are potentially concepts that they want to drill in on, but they never do. And I found it interesting when you mentioned that the characters don't develop, because I agree with that. They don't develop personality-wise, but they certainly develop physically. They grow. And that is basically the only thing that you see in this film is the passage of time, and not even necessarily how the passage of time outside of gigantic world events impacts people's dynamics only slightly, but because these characters are so one-dimensional and all the interesting aspects of this time period are presented to us in off-screen cutaways or fades to black, there's nothing for this film to hang its hat on outside of the 1 or 2 montage sequences that are pretty interestingly constructed filmically. But other than that, this is a stagey, people talking to each other, very flat film from an aesthetic perspective. And thematically, it just has, I don't know what it's trying to say. Is that people die and it doesn't matter, and your family's maybe going to be the only thing that sticks around, but not really. It's very, I think this film is a mess. I think it's terrible on basically every account, and I have nothing positive at all to say about Cavalcade.
Now we talked
categorical
about
failure.
Everyone here talked about how painfully uninterested they were with Cavalcade, and I can agree. I'm gonna admit that I was looking at my phone a number of times throughout the film.
Those memes are mighty funny during this movie.
Yeah. I think I'd also like to throw my hat in the ring and say that I may be the one who paid the closest attention to Cavalcade because I hated this movie so much. It actively made me angry because I think largely it's the screenplay. The screenplay is among the worst, if not the worst I've ever seen. Obviously, there are like there are horribly written films I've seen as well. You know, Paws of Fury, The Legend of Hank comes to mind, of course.
Sure.
But at least
Right in the corner.
that
Didn't
is
win
like a
Best
shitty
Picture.
Nickelodeon animated film, and this is not a Best Picture winner. That was celebrated by the Academy, and up until the 1990s made like the AFI list of the top 100 American films or whatever.
No.
What?
No, absolutely
No,
not.
thank you.
And yes, I want to touch on all of the things that we mentioned here, particularly things that Tucker said about the the themes present in Cavalcade, but also just how piss poor this screenplay is. Thank God it wasn't nominated for screenplay at the Oscars.
Yeah.
It got especially for the early days. A lot of these films, you know, especially if they win Best Picture, did pick up a lot of nominations. Not so with Cavalcade.
Give it to me, Tanner.
Cavalcade.
Wins and noms.
Cavalcade was or won 3 Oscars, won Best Picture, it won Best Director, and it won Best Art Direction, and it was nominated in only one other category, and that is Actress in a Leading Role for Diana Wynyard. So, and she played the more well-to-do wife, Jane.
May I attempt some contextualization for this film? Put this film
Yes.
in world history for us for just a moment, because I do think that I know the part that I paid the most attention to this movie was the end, and the sentiments that the characters were giving off at the end of the film was definitely that of a very uncertain future. That the all these events throughout the life of our main characters, the rich ones, the Marriotts, I think is
Who the film largely becomes concerned with. We drop the working class family probably about 40 minutes in, would you say?
where they move out
Yeah.
and then but there definitely is this, because we come out of World War I, and then we're in this kind of angsty space. Like, I think there's like a lot of there's a I think fairly well done montage scene that displays like political
Yes.
strife and anxieties, and there's the depression is looming. And 1933 is a very important year if you think about world history, because that is the very beginning of the year that Hitler rose to power in Germany. And so
Mhm.
if you are an Academy voter, like 2 or 3 months after Hitler rises to power, and you know about this because this is in the news all across the world. And then there's this movie that presents a very uncertain future that kind of contextualizes the past many years from an English perspective, right? Not of world history, but of English history. Contextualizes it, and then has some characters be like, "Oh man, like a lot of stuff's gone kind of wrong in the last like couple decades." And it's made me really think that you can't see what's going to happen in the future, which is what I took away thematically towards the end of the film. So perhaps that this could be something that is read into the uncertainties of the early 30s. It was a very tumultuous time in world history. Lots of revolutions and plots and, strikes.
Which
and-
this movie lacks.
Yes, a lot of that. It's plot,
Conflicts.
strikes, conflicts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, see, I disagree with that because I think this movie is basically only plot. I mean,
Sure.
one of my major problems with the narrative is at a certain point I kind of stopped being able to discern who was who.
Yes.
Sure.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Which
we,
I
we
think,
were an hour and 20 minutes into this movie. I would have to stop and be like, okay, Tanner, is the dad from the rich family even alive anymore? Which son grew up to be which character who is dating who, whose parents knew them in which way, and then so many people die and I can't remember which one is which. This film does a very poor job at conveying its characters as individual people. They kind of just become this mess of British individuals who are largely interchangeable. Even though they have like 30 years between them age-wise, they kind of even look the same. Like, oh, what the hell's going on here?
I think it becomes very hard to discern. And again, because it's only plot, I can't really sort of anchor my viewing into any emotional arc that I want to follow. I mean, really, the function of a lot of these narratives that span decades of time is that you get to watch a character grow up and experience change. And we do that, I guess, but we do it through the prism of so many different characters who all sort of serve the same blanket and generic function in the story that they ultimately just become like gears And you look at a box of gears. I'm like, brother, that's like the same. I'm just looking at all the same gears. I can't tell these gears apart. And that's how I largely feel about this film. They all just sort of, every character operates against each other to get us to the next historical moment, to maybe some sort of plot level intrigue. The only moment that really got a rise out of me is when we're having this very melodramatic exchange between two of the characters, one of whom I believe is Edward, on on the bow of a ship. And they're having this
there's
exchange.
Been a title card before this that tells you the date. So if you're a date phenom, you know what's going to happen already. But the film holds out.
Right. Now, I'm not a date phenom, but I am familiar with 1999's Titanic.
Yeah.
And that sequence ends with...
But...
It's close enough.
Yeah, close.
Sorry, I'm confusing with Phantom Menace.
Of course.
We're here on the we're here on the boat having this melancholic exchange, and then we hard cut to a life preserver that says Titanic on it, and the scene ends.
No, we don't hard cut. What we do is our characters walk away, and we do like a dramatic push in, and it just says Titanic on it. So to talk about that moment, because I think that is that for me is one of the moments that angered me the most, because
it wasn't necessarily that moment, it was the scene itself, and most of the dialogue that continually frustrated you.
Yes, but I want to talk about it. But to set the scene a little bit for Tucker and I witnessing that scene, because that is preceded by Edward. I don't know where Jonathan came from, frankly.
So many British
Is there a character even named Jonathan?
I don't think so. Edward and his love interest are sitting on the beach talking about... Thank you. No. Yeah. Fanny Alexander's later.
No.
That's
what the one that Joey is into. That was the kid, the dancing kid.
Yes. So, Edward and his love interest sitting on the beach, and they're saying, boy, howdy, wouldn't it be nice to go on a boat sometime? And Tucker turns to me and he says, they're going to go on the Titanic. And I said, there's no way they go on the Titanic. Fade into April 14th, 1914. And I'm
1912.
Like, oh no. 1912, excuse me. 1912.
Date phenom.
Date phenom.
Yeah. April 14th, 1912. And it's immediately should raise the alarm, because it's the only time they give like a specific date in this entire film. Otherwise, it's only years. Yep. And all the dialogue is just like, boy, howdy. We've done everything that we wanted to in our life, and if we died right now, I guess I'd be okay with that. They're like, I don't know if I want to die right now, because, there's still more things that I want to do, and my family, and yada-da-da-da. And then they walk away, and they're on the Titanic, big shock, big surprise. Everyone in the theater in 1933 loses their minds, apparently, because this got Best Picture, and this scene is fucking in it, and I hate this goddamn scene, because all the dialogue is so ham-fisted about, like, oh no, our characters are going to die, but also the family and the family stakes, and what are the families gonna do without them? Who gives a fuck? This is a terribly written scene.
I just laughed out loud when they walked away.
It's laughable. And it is laughable.
When that camera showed Titanic on the life, I was just like, that is so funny. I thought that was hilarious.
This movie has a really weird time balancing its editing with its own dramatic moments. There are 2 or 3 times throughout this film where someone dies, or it's a very serious world-altering situation is happening, and because it's a decently length movie, but it's not a long movie by any stretch, they'll just end the scene quickly and move on to something entirely different and just forget about what happened before. World War I is like barreling on, and we're seeing soldiers fall over, and there's crazy lights in this montage, and then we're just like cut to like a party happening, and then it's just like, oh, it's just a party, and like they're just like, these people are unaware of what's happening, and maybe some of these edits are intended to like create a little bit of juxtaposition that's supposed to have some sort of thematic value, but because the characters are so poorly established and the scenarios aren't led into other than by the passage of time, because time continues to pass no matter what, there's no tension to these things happening. You talk about these characters on the boat, on the Titanic, talking about how they've lived their life and they're so happy together, and as far as I know, really, these characters met 30 seconds before the scene started.
You're exactly correct. We meet adult Edward and his fiancée in the scene on the beach beforehand.
Exactly.
a minute to talk about how they want to go on a ship, and then they're on the ship, and it's the
Weren't they
Titanic. They talk about how they want to
childhood
die.
It's the same kids from earlier in the movie. I thought they were the child.
Yeah, but what do we know about them when they're children? They're not important when they're children. They just want their dad to cut up some people in South Africa when they're kids.
Jesus Christ! Yeah, that was a crazy scene.
Well, first of all, isn't Edward at the dinner where the rich family learns that Alfred's drunk? Is it because he's talking about going to Oxford?
Yeah, and then he gets hit by a fire truck and dies.
Oh, I thought I assumed that was.
Was that
I guess
Joey?
they are just freshly married. So yes, that is Edward and his wife.
Here's the other thing that I want to raise, though. When Joey reacts to the death of Edward, it's an aside saying, "Man, I wish that Edward hadn't have drowned because I wanted to go to war with him." And
my mom's real sad that my brother drowned.
And this is, I think, for me, the heart of the issue with the film, because ultimately,
you found the heart of the movie.
Yeah,
I don't really care about the melancholic and fucking nudge dialogue of the Titanic scene. What I care about is the fact that the death of a son seems to have no bearing on the larger family unit beyond a sort of pontificating about wishing that I had somebody to go into war with.
I don't even think we see the dad react to or talk about the son's death.
No,
ever.
He's absent for a lot of the film.
And that to me is the part that makes this film feel the least coherent. Yeah. Because again, you can stitch together these events through recurrent characters. For as many issues as I have with Forrest Gump, Forrest becomes the sort of anchor point around all these events. Yeah. And we return to him and he reflects upon them and things happen and there's a sense of continuity through the change. But there is no sort of authentic continuity to this film. Yeah. On a character.
I do wonder, because these films are so structurally similar, I do wonder how much we would have referenced Cavalcade when we were talking about Forrest Gump, because I do think it's very, very interesting that we got them back to back. And for me, cements why I think Forrest Gump does this so much better. I don't think any of you disagree with that.
Oh, no.
But what makes that film so interesting to me is the way that it reframes history.
Yeah.
But instead, in Cavalcade, we get history presented as the main draw of the film, that we're going to do a cutaway to the guy flying over the English Channel, and World War I is starting. We're going to do year, and here's a war, and here's a war, and here's an event, and here's the death of Queen Victoria. And these are events that on a surface level impact our characters' lives, but because the film is so focused on skipping forward at a breakneck pace, we never get the aftermath of any of these sequences. The sinking of the Titanic, we never see it, which could have been an interesting scene from a filmic point of view and add a little bit of drama and tension and flair to this film, but we never see it. Okay, and then we don't even see them learn about the Titanic sinking and learn that their son was on it, so we don't get that scene that would have caused a little bit of dramatic tension or continuity. We instead skip a couple months after that, and so they're not really grieving fully. They're sort of over it, so the kids can make a couple jokes about it, even though it doesn't make much sense. And the film does that over and over again to these characters we A, already aren't very attached to, but B, don't feel the need to become attached to, because it doesn't even seem like these crazy things that are happening to them are actually impacting their lives, because we've skipped ahead to the point where they're no longer thinking about them, they're thinking about what's coming next. Mm-hmm. The wars have impact as far as people have to leave and people die in them, but we continue skipping forward. It's like, oh, you know what, that war, that's old news. Let's focus on the next one coming up. It's like, holy shit, slow down, trim down the amount of scenes that you have to focus on, and give us some sort of continuity, setup, and payoff. I don't know anything.
I think because this film ultimately it doesn't say anything about any of history. It does not have
what happened.
Any comment.
Happened.
And it could not have gone any other way. It must have gone the exact same way that it happened in real. I think the film just doesn't try to investigate or think about what its characters would think about history, or the filmmakers themselves aren't thinking about what they think about these historical events. The film has an anti-war flair. The Boer War at the beginning kind of sets up this like anxiety about the people dying. Isn't there a character that dies in the Boer War that we meet that was like part of, I think maybe
no.
Alfred and Robert both come back, and there are primary characters who their wives and friends at home are just like, oh geez, hope they come back.
We never,
and they do.
The camera never really leaves England, even though the film is trying to be global, which I think is another failing of it.
Conceptually global, not filmically global.
No. And so then when we get into World War I do believe that is okay anti-war filmmaking. It's very glorious. It makes it seem much more glorious than it really is. And
I really thought. Okay, sorry, continue, team. Sorry.
But the end, just I don't know. It doesn't. It seems to be like, this was bad. It wasn't. All these people died. And it was there seems to be no reason to it, but beyond, I mean, there's just no commentary. There's just no extra thinking about what any of this could mean.
No, it's thematically vapid. The ethos of the film seems to be, and this is sort of cemented in towards the end, that like, and this is a Forrest Gump reference, shit happens.
Yeah.
History's pretty crazy, isn't it?
Isn't it?
Isn't it, mate? I mean, like, you're absolutely right, Timo. It's not attempting to say anything outside of, like, some war is bad. Like, you nailed it there.
History is crazy, I'm sure.
We saw...
Sure enough, it is crazy, and lots of history happens, but buckle in, 1933 people. You're in for a lot more.
Like, the history has not even begun yet.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that's really interesting to me is, if you think about the film through an anti-war lens, I do actually find the sort of beginning, in part, compelling through the lens of, what is Robert's wife's name?
Jane?
Sure.
Yes.
Through the eyes of Jane as she's, like, watching her sons play with the figures and try to recount the Boer War, and this sort of pressure she feels to, like, maintain this family unit with this just general paranoia and fear that her husband's not coming home. I actually find that to be quite compelling. And when they're waiting for the news to come and the children don't understand the magnitude of the situation, even the line when Robert does return home and the kid does ask, so how many people did you kill? And he's like, no, we're not going to talk about that. Even though it's not particularly nuanced, I think there's an idea there.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem for me is that when we get to World War I and we're trying to, as Timo's saying, bring the anti-war stuff more into focus, the anti-war, I'm going to call it more of a vibe than anything.
Yeah.
The anti-war vibe is communicated filmically, but on a level that completely goes past characters or script. Not only are we bypassing theme, we're bypassing character reaction, because we have the sort of trope that is much better handled in All Quiet on the Western Front, which preceded this film by a couple of years, of young men being hyped to go to war. I mean, these guys are hyped to get to Paris.
It's going to be marvelous.
Yeah.
Marvelously marvelous, they say.
Uh-huh.
And then we go into what I feel is the tiresome montage sequence, despite being interested in these semi-opaque images of war over these.
Shit's happening on screen, which it wasn't really before, so I'm a lot more interested.
Yeah, maybe
a lot of things
into
to looking at.
Yeah, it's these sort of semi-opaque imagery of death as this sort of looping footage of men are walking, and these presented in this context, I guess, sort of harrowing songs they're singing. But ultimately,
it's like patriotic songs that are like providing the backbeat for war, but they're like upbeat songs. So it is a little bit of juxtaposition, and I think it does provide filmic commentary in that way.
I think it's the one moment of the film that's done well.
Yes.
They're trying, but my issue with it then is there's really no interrogation from our characters who are actually deployed as to what these horrors that we see in the montage mean to them. Really, the great moment of interpersonal character comes between Joey and Robert when they meet in the rail off, like the rail headquarters. And they talk about the armistice being signed. There's no moment of Joey, as you get in a film like All Quiet on the Western Front, sitting there being like, oh fuck, I can't believe what's around me. I can't believe what a sobering difference there is on the front lines, opposed to what I thought it was going to be like back in Europe, even though from a filmic perspective, there's this sort of nebulous gestural thought that disillusionment is happening. It never connects to character. And that, again, I'm hammering on the same issue, but I really think this is the one pervasive problem with Cavalcade that to me completely destroys any connection to the film I have. I don't think it's as terrible as you guys do. I just don't care. And it's this disconnect here that I'm describing that leads to that apathy, I think.
I'd even go so far as to say that it's a bad anti-war film. Because when it has just a softball, the tee is set up right there. War is bad, and how do we show it? Show our young, chipper, excited character now harrowed by the experiences he had in the Great War, and they whiff. Yeah, well, he does get killed. Okay,
but we don't see it
indirectly, off screen, kind of softly.
We just whiff it. That ball is set up on the tee for us, and we just kind of throw our bat into left field, because. What ends up happening is, we come back from that montage and Joey is fine, like not sullied at all morally or traumatized by anything that he saw.
Model.
He's got a sweet famous girlfriend, and he's back home, and his mom's like, "Oh, Joey, I'm real worried about you in the war," and he's like, "Oh, Mom, you don't have to worry." And then he goes off back because he's on vacation or whatever. And I really thought that was it. I thought World War I was ended after that. I'm like, we're not even gonna kill this guy. Like, are you serious, the writer of Cavalcade? But no, of course he does die off screen. But yeah, when he goes to talk to his dad, I'm like, okay, that's another opportunity for this guy who's been in 2 wars now to sort of really, get to the ground level of this thing with his son. And what do they talk about? They talk about the armistice being signed, and when they talk about interpersonal character stuff, they say, Joey tells his father, "Oh, Mom and everyone at home is okay still, like all good over there." And then he dies, and then his mom is sad about it. Like, come on. It's so easy. It's so easy to do this stuff. It's been done time and time and time again in multiple war films. And we whiffed it here.
Easier than World War I in making an anti-war movie. Like, that is the easiest war to exploit.
There's a great example that came out 3 years before you, Cavalcade.
Yeah, probably the best example.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think there's also something that frustrates me more on a larger scale, and this is something that is a lot more difficult to handle than them whiffing these possible character interactions, but is that we do establish an interesting dynamic that could play into themes by having the film ostensibly split for that first half into 2 different families coming from different backgrounds. The fact that we have the upper class family who is being doted on by a large number of lower class, with how they call servants, and then those servant characters become their own family unit, and they move apart, and they establish their own business, and there's this alcoholism, and their daughter is growing up and wants to be a dancer. Like, these are all elements that make this family distinct and interesting, and the dynamic between the 2 of them, the 2 families, is pretty interesting, because we've got Jane, the upper class mother, and Ellen, the lower class mother, who still sort of see each other sometimes, and see each other somewhat on the same level, even though she's calling her mistress, and there's this disconnect. These elements could have easily been the core of the film, but then Alfred dies, and we don't see Ellen for a long time, and the daughter we don't see until she's ready to become just the girl that Joey likes, and then the mother doesn't do anything, and the boys die, and the dad, Robert, is just inexplicably gone for huge chunks of the film, even though he's in war, but he should be at home. It's really confusing. All of this just splinters off. None of it is paid off in the end, other than Robert and Jane are old together, and they're old together. That's it. And it's just such a missed opportunity, because I do think that at face level, even though I'm not particularly engaged by that opening portion, I'm like, whew, these British people are talking about a war I never heard of, and I don't care. But on a
colonial
larger
war you've never heard of, oh, sign me up, man.
There's many of those. But on a larger conceptual level, I can see that there's an idea being planted here. But then that seed gets like trampled on, it's never watered, and it gets dug up and like thrown in the garbage bin, and like someone pukes on it. Like that's it. That's what happens to the seed in this film.
I think that idea is an interesting idea. Basically, from what I take it, is like the new century, which is what the film opens with, is and we get
new millennia,
the new everything.
Tanner said that, by the way. Right, it was the transition to 1900, and we're like, okay, the new century. And he's like, oh, it's also the start of new millennia. And like 30 seconds later, I'm like, that Tanner, that's not true. You just you lied.
But I think that the class politics of the film, as watered down as they are attempting to make a statement that says something along the lines of that the old ways of like class relationships have kind of broken apart, and now the lower classes can strike out on their own and make their own for better and for worse. That's kind of where it ends. I don't really think it has much more to say to go beyond that, but I feel like it's saying that like the future presents a less hierarchical society that perhaps will give poor people a little more agency in their lives. But is it really a good thing? The film kind of isn't super like sure if that's a good thing or not.
Timo, I do want to talk about this because this is another big whiff from this standpoint. Because as I said, and as Tucker mentioned, it does show promise, showing the sort of split narrative from this well-to-do and working class family. And then after the war, Alfred and his working class family, they split off. He gets this pub from this fellow soldier he met in South Africa, and like, okay, great, he's got his own business now. But no, of course, he's like an alcoholic and he can't run a business and like, and all this stuff. And he gets into a fight with his family one night. And as he stumbles out into the street after like belligerently yelling at everyone in his home because he's like, you don't think I'm good enough, blah, 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 blah. And he stumbles out into the street. His mother or his wife's mother, the old woman who's staying with them, says, oh, I guess some people are just meant to work for others. Just work under others, do what they're told. Yeah,
that was a weird moment.
It's a really weird moment. And then, instead of refuting that in any case,
he dies.
He fucking gets run over. Like, the guy who was meant to, like, refute that point and sort of, like, toss off this idea that the working class is, like, naturally less skilled at running their own business and being independent, gets fucking run over because he's drunk. And then that's it. And then we never spend any more time.
He gets run over by what I assume was a fire truck,
like a
1900 fire truck. But also like in the middle of like a party, like a street party for what reason? There might have been like a holiday that it was celebrating or something.
Yeah.
But I don't think they mentioned that, so it just felt really weird. He opens his door and everyone's in like full Mardi Gras costume. And they're like bumping to like, I don't know. Beastie Boys was popular back then. They're in the streets like boom, 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 and then he just of course.
Yeah, and then we never return to that family again. We never do. We see them like on the beach when they're doing like the quartet, the barbershop quartet thing. Their daughter is a dancer, and then we're largely concerned with her because she's gonna grow up to be Joey's girlfriend. Okay, we never visit the family again.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about the barbershop quartet sequence.
Okay,
because I found it to be incredibly strange. For a number of reasons. The first being, the sequence opens on the barbershop quartet. Now, nobody in the barbershop quartet, unless I'm wrong, has any relation to any of the characters in the narrative.
No. They're there, though. That's the relation.
But here's the interesting thing.
Physical proximity.
We then learn that number is following a core character from our cast doing a dance that was so good that it won her a bear.
Yeah.
So instead of showing her do the dance number, we see some fucking random Tom, Dick, and Harry doing a barbershop number that says the word beside more times than I've heard in the past calendar year in my life combined. And then this little girl wins the bear for the dance we don't see, and then another kid just starts screaming.
Yeah,
I mean, so much in this game.
Fucking screaming.
Okay, but from sound design point of view, this scene is kind of awesome because they just let that scream take over, and it's the only thing you can hear in the scene.
There are a couple.
I think this film it's in that early time of sound films, and so they are experimenting, and they have not solidified like the conventions for how you do sound in movies, or at least how you did back then. And so at a number of points throughout the film, there are interesting sounding moments wherein the crowd is very loud, or the girl is screaming and overpowering what we are supposed to be listening to, that I think is trying to say some stuff. Either that, or they're just experimenting and flexing with what they can do with sound. I don't really know.
Well, I mean, what that scene is saying is the kid was upset that she didn't win the bear. I mean,
yeah,
that's what the scene
it
is
is.
saying.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that there's some funny moments in the movie. I think the kid screaming is funny because then we cut and the kid is still screaming.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I
Yeah,
also
he's,
like the moment.
being carried like a sack of potatoes, and
I also like the moment where the, let's call her maybe a little bit overweight character at the beginning of the film is dressing up and is going to dress up as Lady Godiva, and then the other person's like, you'll make somebody go blind if you dress up as Lady Godiva. The first of many trips to my phone I made during this movie was to figure out who Lady Godiva was.
Yeah. I've only previously heard that name in "Don't Stop Me Now" by Queen. So
Yeah,
I
that's true.
don't
They do
know.
reference that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just know the.
I've heard it
chocolate.
in the chocolate aisle. Fuck, you won't beat me to it. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you. I have nothing else to say about Cavalcade.
I'm scanning my notes just to see if there's anything else, because I do have trivia as well if we want to get to that. But anything else from the peanut gallery?
There's one other scene that is just kind of whiffed, which is London gets raided.
Yep.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then
Well,
they go up on the
Zeppelin.
roof and hang out, and that's it.
We should get down to the basement. Fuck that noise. Let's go up to the roof.
And it completely takes any tension out of this from this scene, because you're watching cutaways of people like running and trying to head indoors, and you've got these incredibly dark. Like,
Well, yeah,
like
I wanna ask about that.
Inconceivably dark.
Was that just our
shots.
version, or were your guys' like
No, it was dark.
completely
As hell.
unviewable as well? Okay.
I thought that was intentional.
Yeah, I thought it was
probably
nighttime.
is, but it's so
But you should
inconceivably
still be able
dark
to
that there's
see.
no tension.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, is that a blimp up there? Is there just someone turn on the light as a moth? I can't really tell. And then so someone comes to the room and they're like, guys, you gotta get to the basement. They're like, basement? Is there a basement? Nah, let's go on the roof. And then then the scene just kind of like messes around for a little bit, and then we just move on to something else with no consequence. I mean, we saw a bomb dropped, but it was at a building nearby. Did some people get hurt? It certainly didn't impact any of our characters, so the film doesn't concern itself with it. And just yet another sequence that could have been filmically interesting, of watching them try to hide and the room shaking and all these things, kind of like when they were getting bombed in All Quiet on the Western Front. But they avoid that, not only from a filmmaking perspective, but from a writing perspective of the screenplay. The characters aren't scared of it at all, so there's no dramatic tension to the scene either.
I just wonder what the budget of this movie was, because they seem to have maybe written themselves a larger script than they could have paid to produce. And
Now,
yes, Abram?
I was looking at this. The budget was high.
Really?
It's like $1 million budget and didn't make it back.
$1.1 million for the budget here.
Yeesh, that is
And it
pretty
made
high.
$1 million at the domestic box office, but 3.5 in world. Yeah. Oh wait, no. Rentals. I don't know what this means. I'm just looking at the Wikipedia page right
Yeah, that's
now.
what I saw. It was a high
Yeah.
budget, and I don't think it made the money back.
Okay.
Domestic is going to be U.S. sales. It probably did very well in England, given that it is entirely about British. people.
I'm thrown off by the word rentals in the Wikipedia number here, so I don't know.
Who knows what that means?
Anyway. So
That's
I
a
wanna talk.
$23 million budget in today's money, which is actually not that big.
Well,
Less
no.
than 65.
But also the Hollywood system has changed a lot, so
Yeah.
But to answer why this film might have won Best Picture, because I think Timo, was it you who opened up saying you don't know why they picked this one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I do have a little bit of like maybe reasoning why. So this is of course based on a stage play that
This is
was
not based.
no, it's not based.
It's
It is
French.
adapted from a stage play. But how about that?
Sure.
That was huge in London. It was, they do this big March of Time thing that they do a number of times throughout the film. And it was apparently very expensive and very audaciously done on the London's Drury Lane Theatre, which is the only place where they could show this. They could show this the stage production, because every other stage, including Broadway, just did not have like the capability or the size to show this production. There was like hydraulic lifts and things involved with it. It was crazy. So it was very highly anticipated when they announced that it was becoming a film.
Yeah.
Which probably resulted in the rapturous reviews and box office that this film did receive, and thusly it winning Best Picture, just because it was this huge stage production that you couldn't see anywhere else but this one specific theater in London where they were showing it, and then they made it into a movie.
Maybe. I buy my explanation about Hitler a little more, though.
Yeah, sure. That's also fair.
Could be both.
Yeah. Let's see what else I have here. So obviously there's people draw some connections between this and James Cameron's Titanic, much like Abram did. Because, just some fun little coincidences here. Both films won Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Art Direction. That's a little fun thing. They're both distributed by Fox, another little interesting tidbit there. And when both films feature the both films do feature the Titanic, but they also feature background music that includes Johann Strauss's The Blue Danube, which, maybe is a little reference from James Cameron there.
Could be. This movie had quite. I mean, if you're looking for needle drops of the 18th century, this movie really had them. We had Auld Lang Syne, as well as it opens with God Save the King. I mean, just about every single banger from this period in history, is like represented in this film.
Yeah.
No need for a hero.
I'm sure the soundtrack for this movie would have gone crazy.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Instant platinum.
I also have this film has a number of firsts as well, not necessarily at the Oscars, but in film history as well. It was one of the first films to feature the use of the words "damn" and "hell," which were both used, obviously because this is a pre-Hays Code film.
Yeah.
There actually is a quote from the president of Fox Studios, Sidney Kent. His quote says, "As far as creating a precedent which might be followed by other producers is concerned," I assume he's talking about, the use of foul language in film, "the best answer would be that anyone who could make a picture as good as Cavalcade might be justified in following the precedent."
All right.
Well,
I will never have any bad language in any of my movies now.
Yeah.
Because
that makes them as good as Cavalcade.
Because that would make it as good as
exactly.
Cavalcade, and I don't want that.
And last thing, it's also one of the very, very earliest uses of product placement, because I'm sure, as we all saw, there's a giant Lipton's tea sign that goes by on a wagon towards the beginning.
Yeah, I saw
Very
that.
strange.
Yeah.
Abram?
But yeah.
Well, I was going to say, Tanner was mentioning this precedent for using foul language. And this holiday season's Migration is sure going to use a lot of that.
Now that's not a whiff. That's a home run. That's a home run joke right there, Abram. Very good.
It's a reference that I bet maybe Seth would get in our audience. I don't know.
Hey, everyone's gonna get it soon. This is gonna be evergreen when Migration beats Mario to become the highest-grossing animated film of all time.
Yeah. All right.
Let's spin the wheel.
I think we're wrapping up.
Oh,
here.
no, we don't got to spin the wheel.
The Queen dies.
We got to give this movie a score.
How about that?
Let's give this movie a score. What am I going to give this movie a score?
Topical.
This movie only gets one number, and I already said it. Okay, let's go. Who's got it all punched in?
Yeah.
All right.
I'm in.
All right, hang on.
Tanner's not in.
There we go. I got it.
Let's find out what Cavalcade gets in 3, 2, 1.
Beep, boop, beep, boop, beep, boop, beep, boop, beep, boop. Oh.
Tucker?
Oh.
Didn't hit enter.
Oh, there we go.
Tucker's yanking our chain.
Oh. It just sneaked in. Just sneaked in there.
It is just barely the worst movie of all time. Or of the Best Picture winner of all time. Not the worst movie of all time.
Okay, say the scores.
1.1.
This is crazy.
1.1, the bottom. That's below Crash by just a tiny margin. Any other numbers, we wouldn't have been able to make it. But the point breakdown is Tucker gave it a 0.5. Tanner and I gave it a 1.0. And Abram graciously gave it a 2.0.
Wow.
A surprising,
Four times better than what I
a
gave it.
terrible score, by the way. A terrible, terrible score.
I mean, right, guys. I mean, we're talking about I get a
Bad.
fucking 2 out of 10. All right.
But
I
like,
didn't-
This is
I
4
mean,
times
I'm
better than Broadway Melody?
I'm not being kind to Cavalcade. I gave it a
No,
2.
no,
I
no.
get 20%.
Yeah.
Yeah, no ties
but
today. We've got
I
a new,
was just
we've got a
surprised by
new,
that.
we got
I
a new
just-
biggest loser though.
Yeah.
I think what it comes down to for me is I just don't find it as offensive as you guys do. Like,
Sure,
I,
sure, sure.
It's
Yeah.
not like
I-
terribly racist. It's not racist like a lot over and over
Uh-huh.
again.
Yeah, I
Well, no,
find...
because there's not a single character. of
I thought they
color
were
in
going to
this
get
film.
close because I want to talk about the Boer War thing because I don't know what's heard
The-
of
the
this.
I'm
this
bored
particular.
war.
Yeah, the very good, Timo. Well, that's Timo.
Yeah, I
'cause
was
he's
fighting
the
for
only
my
one.
life to stay awake in this movie. You know what I'm saying?
Timo, you're the only one who could have potentially heard of the Anglo-Boer War
I had
of
heard
1900.
of it beforehand.
Okay.
I still don't know anything about it because this movie told me jack all that actually.
So
happened
I
in
tried
the
to do a little
war.
bit of research just to figure out if this was like a horribly racist thing or not. If we were going to South Africa and killing the native people or anything like
I
that.
think it was
But,
like Dutch v English.
Yeah, so it's like Dutch and German people who had been living there for a number of generations now because that place was colonized hundreds of years before this film takes place. And so Britain got control of that during the Napoleonic Wars. It got control of South Africa. And basically what they were doing was because Britain abolished slavery, they're like, hey, the Boers is what the group of people were called. That these like European descendant people who live in South Africa. They were saying like, hey, you guys can't have slaves anymore. And the Boers were like, but we still want slaves. And that's what the war was over.
Oh, okay.
Also, they were like trying to control the territories and everything like that. So it wasn't justly about like Britain being the good guys and wanting to abolish slavery in South Africa. It was also about like exploiting the natural resources of the area and the people who lived there long before any of the Europeans got there. So yeah,
At least
all
it's
sounds
like,
very cringe.
just far more complicated than Cavalcade has any right or capability of addressing.
Let's go to something very simple now. The Speedwheel.
God, yeah.
Again, remember, if we land on wings, we're not taking it. And
No, we got to get something else. But yeah, I'll just implore the audience one more time to leave your thoughts on what we should do after the quest for the bestest, the best picture winner's quest for the bestest, in the comments or in the Discord. Link in the description for that. But I'm ready.
Sing, Tanner. Sing for me.
Wheel, what's your deal? Give us a movie that makes us squeal. Is it on digital? Is it on real? Wheel, what's your deal?
And Wheels
Oh.
deal is
Gotta
it
do it
not?
again.
No,
No, that would be number 4.
Yes, you guys are wrong. The Wheels deal is number 1, which is the most recent film on
Which is
our list,
I
which
know
is
which
going to be quite an old movie, I believe.
No, it's not.
Well, I mean, quite an old movie that came out in our lifetimes.
Yeah.
Which is the 2004 Best Picture winner, starring such names as Morgan Freeman, Clint Eastwood, Hilary Swank, and in small roles, Anthony Mackie and Michael Pena.
Oh.
We will be watching Clint Eastwood's film $1 Million Baby.
Some
$1 Million
MCU
Baby.
alumni toward the end
Shut
there.
up.
Yeah, I mean, I know Tucker has seen this one. Have any of the other ones seen this?
This is a boxing movie, right?
It is a boxing film.
It is a boxing movie, but it's not a Rocky boxing movie. If you don't know anything about this film, please don't look up anything about it. This was one of the most impactful single moment film watches of my life, and you will understand once you watch this movie.
Okay.
I love $1 Million Baby, and I'm very excited to give it a critical look.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching it as well. Abram, have you seen
Fantastic
it?
Film.
No.
Okay.
Just fantastic.
Fantastic.
Well,
Woof, Cavalcade, huh?
we did it. We dragged this episode out long enough. We'll be back for $1 Million Baby. Well, hopefully we get a lot. Is that in your pocket? What was in your pocket the whole time, Abram? You just pulled something out of your pocket.
So I bought, when I was at Super Nintendo World, these Yoshis. There's 10 of them.
Oh.
And every time we record anything, I just play with them. And I was putting them in my pocket, just, I don't know,
It's good to have
I-
little fiddly things
know.
to fiddle with while you're podcasting.
manipulative, you might call it.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Gripping those Yoshis.
we will. I was going to make a pun about the grip in the Yoshis. We'll be back next time to talk about $1 Million Baby. Thanks for
Yes.
sticking with us through this cavalcade. We are so close to being finished.
Wait, hold on. What does cavalcade mean?
It literally it means like a large
Like a
procession
march.
or a group of people moving in a
Oh, okay.
direction.
Yeah. Like cavalry. Yeah.
Cavalcade.
Cavalcade. Until next
Clavicle.
time, stay cool, keep warm. Peace.